We're in Bennington, Vermont, checking out this guy. Welcome, zombies. Today we're exploring what is nowadays known as Bennington, Vermont. But what it used to be known as anciently, I don't know exactly, but there was definitely a big old ancient city sitting right here. And we're going to see proof of that in a massive obelisk that's still sitting right there in Bennington. And if you ever drive through the area, you're not going to miss it. As the expression goes, it does stand out like a sore thumb. It just looks like a big rock, perfectly stacked rock, super heavy, very tall rock thumb sticking up in what we might look like the middle of nothing, Vermont. But we'll talk more about that, and we'll also just talk a lot more about obelisks today. If you join me from my airship here, we'll take a little look from above on Google Maps at Bennington, Vermont. We're on the east coast of the United States, what's called the United States of America. And right here, just to the east of New York, sitting right above Massachusetts, very close to the New York and Massachusetts border. Right here is Bennington, Vermont. And we're going to take a look at several different places, but like I said, we're going to be talking about obelisks and spending a good amount of time there on that. And this is where the obelisk sits here in Bennington. This right here is the top of it, and you can see it sits right in what they call the monument circle. So they're going to say that this obelisk is just a battle monument. You know, they put it up there just to commemorate a battle that took place here. This is an old ancient obelisk that has been renamed, and also we'll talk more about this, but a piece of technology that has been renamed as a battle monument. And as I've mentioned before, so many of these ancient architectures, ancient technologies are turned into government buildings, universities, war memorials, hospitals, just stuff like that, you know? And in this case, we're looking at a war memorial, but it's not. So let's just dive right into it, shall we? It is a 306-foot stone obelisk. And I mean, let's really just jump right into it. So that got me, okay, so follow me if you can. It's not gonna be that hard to follow. It's more difficult for me to just kind of pick where I wanna go with this. But so I was doing some research, and this is how it goes, by the way. I do zero research before I've gone to any of these places. I just, like I explained a little bit in my last video, I've mainly been getting to places and using Airbnb and just picking different Airbnbs, places I haven't been. And that took me to Vermont, and then driving through Vermont, I noticed this, like I said, it sticks out like a sore thumb. And then I am now, months later, going back and making this video and doing research on the area. So there's no anything put into what I'm like, no planning has gone into at all what I'm going to see, and no research beforehand, anything like that. So when I sit down to the research, I have absolutely no idea where it's going to take me. In this case, I had no idea. I'm in California right now, in Newport Beach, and I had no idea that in my research on this Bennington, Vermont obelisk, I was going to be led to another obelisk with the name Bennington in San Diego. They call that one the USS Bennington Monument, another war monument memorial, which, no. And I didn't do any, like I said, I just found out it was there and I was like, I should go see that. So I just drove down there and I was it's still amazing, but I was slightly disappointed because it wasn't nearly as big as the one in Bennington, not even close. The one in San Diego is a 60-foot monument and the one in Bennington is a 306-foot obelisk. I should say obelisk, let's be more accurate, huh? And so that got me thinking, like, well, I wonder what the tallest obelisks are. Is Bennington one of the tallest ones? And yeah, it is. And when I say tallest, buried. All of these are going to be very buried, so the true height of these, I don't know how to really estimate that, but triple, quadruple the height, I don't see why not. Like 1,000 or quite a bit taller, I think that's definitely feasible. And again, we're just looking at the tops of these. And so that got me thinking, well, how tall is this Bennington obelisk compared in Vermont compared to, I don't know, any other ones that are documented and out there? And that brought me to this article right here, which just, this is what I'm saying. When I have no idea what's going to happen in the research that I start to do, like I just had no idea about this stuff, which I'll show you a lot more of this one right here. Because this one fascinated me so much, I had to do a little bit more research and look at it. Like that's crazy. So it's called the Trilon and Perisphere, and this was in New York City. It's no longer there, got taken down. Why? I think that's a good question, great question, Zombie, because that's a really good question, Zombie. This one's located in Texas. Okay, sorry, so this was the tallest one, no longer is, but this one, they said stood at 620 feet tall. That's a pretty tall obelisk. But again, compared to what these were when originally built, I think they're actually much, much taller structures. But as far as how we've seen them and we're looking at them, this one in New York City, 620 feet. And there's this one in San Jacinto. San Jacinto. I don't know how they'd actually say that in Texas. I was kind of bummed because I've been to Houston before, but it was before I started doing any of this architecture research type of stuff. Anyways, never saw this while I was there. Hopefully I will at some point, because this would be amazing to see. This one is still standing at 567 feet in Texas. And then we've got this one right here. Okay, this is in North Korea. I thought it would just be, it's interesting to see ones in other places, but I'm typically focusing on stuff here in the United States of America. And then there's the Washington Monument at 555 feet, which I think we've probably all seen that at some point or another in a picture, video, or something like that. Here's one in Russia. This one is the Jefferson Davis Monument. This one's in Kentucky at 351 feet. And then here's the Bennington, Vermont one at 306 feet. So it comes in at number 7 on the top 10. Tallest in the world, I guess, is what they're saying. And in the United States, I guess it would be number 3. Is that right? Well, so if that one were still up, but let's count it. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so it would be the 5th tallest obelisk in the United States. But already right there, isn't that like why do we have such tall obelisks in the United States, where like nothing was here until Indians and Cowboys, right? It's because there were absolutely prosperous civilizations here previously, and now some of their old architecture and technology, in this case, just repurposed into war memorials, because we love to memorialize war. here is the Bunker Hill Monument in Boston, Massachusetts, and I did get to visit that one, which was very cool. I'll be making a more in-depth video on that as well. And as far as the Bennington, Vermont obelisk goes, the monument's cornerstone was laid in 1887, completed in 1889. So again, we're under 2 years to build this absolutely insane obelisk, all made out of very, very heavy, perfectly stacked stone, shooting hundreds of feet up in the air. And how deep into the ground it goes, I haven't found any mention of that, but for it to be able to stand like that, it absolutely is going deeper into the ground. And like I'm saying, I think it goes a lot deeper into the ground. There's an observatory level at 200 feet, which you reach by an elevator. The stairs are closed, but from that 200 feet, you can see other US states, Massachusetts, New York, maybe some other ones as well. So that would be really amazing to get up there on a clear day and have a look. And so I mentioned the USS Bennington Monument, and I was so stunned. I was like, really? I'm right here by this one. And as I'm making this video on the Bennington Monument I just saw out in Vermont. So I had to go see it. This was the original, this is the picture that it shows of it. And they say this is the dedication of the memorial, which sure, maybe they at this time did dedicate it to whatever they chose to dedicate it to, but to me this picture just shows it sitting there. And it also shows back here, I might have a little video of this, but a lot of like this right here, this line out there is also just all rock. And I think this whole San Diego Peninsula Harbor area was likely, at least parts of it, like this right here, also, done by man, created by man, type of a thing. But to me, this obelisk looks like it's just been sitting here, and these people are now coming to see it. But that doesn't look like something that was just freshly put up. Now let's talk a little bit about these obelisks being actually pieces of technology and not just monuments. I think it's kind of obvious once you just kind of let yourself entertain that idea. But through any like mainstream or sources or whatever, like they're not gonna say that. It's all just like in here. Let's see. They said, okay, so I'll come back to these Pyramidians in a second. It's the little piece that they place on top of these, like the little pyramid that gets placed on top of the obelisk, but oftentimes covered in gold to reflect the rays of the sun. I don't think you build all this and put a gold pyramid on top of it just to reflect the sun rays. To me, that's a bit ridiculous. But what does make sense is using that to harness the sun rays and convert it into energy. That would make a lot more sense. Gold is great for conducting electricity, that sort of thing. And the height on it, that would make a lot of sense. And the shape of it, that makes a lot of sense. The pyramid and obelisk significance have been previously overlooked, especially the astronomical phenomena connected with the sunrise and sunset, light and sun pillars respectively. So yeah, that's making a lot more sense to me. And I mean, that's how they built stuff back then. This is how they did it. They built stuff so that the sunrise and the sunset hit these super tall, built in a very specific way, obelisks with a pyramid on top, leafed in gold, so that when the sun hits it, it can be converted into energy. And so back to the Pyramidians, it's the uppermost piece or capstone of an Egyptian pyramid or obelisk. And so when I read that, that definitely made me think of the video that I just made on Wilmington, where I showed a couple what looked to be pyramids. They're perfectly cut exactly like pyramids, but they're missing top pieces. And here's another look at these couple of pyramids. Yeah, I mean, how deep do those actually go? How big are they actually? Has something been stripped off the top? And so when I came and read this, I was like, oh yeah, that's a gold-plated capstone that sits on top of these. Like, of course that would be missing off of those then. Like someone went and copped those. And when you read through this, it says that that's the case. Like, people like to buy these, they're traded, they're expensive, there's not that many of them in existence, etc. So like, makes perfect sense that those pyramids in Wilmington don't have the Pyramidians on top of them because they were valuable and someone swooped them. And like it mentions right here, of course we're going right back to the Egyptians here. The Egyptians, the Romans, the Greek, all of them, all like these civilizations, they're the ones who built this stuff. Yeah, see right here it says very few pyramidia have survived into modern times. Okay, so now I thought we would touch on, this is so mind-blowing. Let's just get into it. The Trilon and Perisphere, which was part of the New York Expo, the New York World Fair, which I've mentioned this a couple times in other videos, like the St. Louis World Fair Expo. When I say fair, expo, I'm saying the same thing, but World Fair in New York, St. Louis, Missouri, San Francisco, California, San Diego, California. I mean, they had a bunch of them everywhere. One of the craziest things that they try and say about this stuff is it was all intended as temporary with steel framing and plasterboard facades. All right, I have not been able to go see this one in New York City, touch it with my own hands, so I don't know, but I'm going to say what they're saying about steel framing and what did they say? Plasterboard facades. I'm saying that's all false, because I have had the opportunity to go to the one now, the remnants of what's left in San Diego, and let me tell you, it's all rock, and amazing ancient architecture, just as it's supposed to be, because that's what it is. But that's the story that we're told over and over, is that it's just all temporary. Like, they built it quick and then they took it down quick after, just because like a pop-up fair kind of a thing. And when you see this stuff, it's like, no way, there's no way this was just a pop-up fair. So I don't know exactly why, or like what they were trying to accomplish with all these. I have a couple guesses. I've talked about it a little bit before in other videos. And so the Trilon and Perisphere were known as the theme center of the 1939 New York World's Fair. The Perisphere is a tremendous sphere, 180 feet in diameter, connected to the 610-foot spire-shaped Trilon, Obelisk, by what was at the time the world's longest escalator. And I'm gonna say that, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but you know, like I've said plenty, I think plenty of technology was just already sitting around. Escalators as well. Like the Bennington, Vermont has an escalator in it. This Trilon has an escalator in it. I'll get into this in later videos, I think, but I've been to some malls, shopping centers now that I'm pretty sure just repurposed leftovers of old castles that have escalators in them. And I just think 100%, especially when you're building structures that are this tall, you're not just, even if you can just build the stairs all the way up and down, that's amazing. Like, just amazing, just that alone. But of course, if you're building stuff this tall, you've got other ways to move up and down it, like escalators. Seems like a pretty good way to do it. And the Perisphere housed a diorama which they named Democracy, which, in keeping with the fair's theme, the world of tomorrow, they do this. It's like, just say the opposite. Like, this is what it actually is the ancient world, the world that's behind us, but they depict it as like, oh, this is the world of tomorrow, and then they destroy it, and it's just like all gone, and it was just all for nothing, basically. But it's just, no, it's some sort of brainwashing strategy where take the old ancient stuff, call it the world of tomorrow to these people who don't, to the new populations that don't know any better, and they don't know any better. And it says it depicted a utopian city of the future. And I just think like utopian cities of free energy where people got along. I think there were time periods where that did exist in our past, like just the most amazing stuff you could imagine. Those cities, those cultures did exist in our past. And I talked a lot about this in Albany, in the Albany video in New York. If you want to go watch that one, I really recommend that you watch my Albany, New York video. But I mentioned a little bit, talk a little bit about, and I'll do it more in depth later on, but why these people got wiped out. Because there's evidence of them, the art and just like the architecture, in my opinion, is some of the biggest evidence. But then that coupled with the Bible and the Book of Mormon, different scriptures that we have out there that refer specifically to these people, to the Egyptians, to the Jews, to the Italians, to the Greeks, the Romans. It just, we're told why they get wiped out. So if you're interested in that, go watch the New York Albany video. The interior display was viewed from above on a moving sidewalk, while a multi-image slide presentation was projected on the dome of the sphere. After exiting the perisphere, visitors descended to ground level on the third element of the theme center, the helicline, a 950-foot-long spiral ramp that partially encircled the perisphere. Just absolute insanity. And the name perisphere was coined using the Greek prefix peri, meaning all around, about, or enclosing, and the name Trilon was coined from the phrase triangular pylon. So, yep, let's give it all the ancient wording in our ads that we run for it. Let's show the ancient Romans, but nope, this is just, we popped this up for a second right now, come to the fair, and we're gonna take it all down. And this never existed in the past. It's just all just entertainment, amusement, and that's it. And this where this used to exist is in Flushing Meadows Park. They tore this all down and just turned it into a park in Flushing in Queens, New York. Both buildings were raised, which that was a new word. I mean, I definitely heard the word, but I guess I never really knew what it meant. But just that's the word for demolition. I guess it's just a nicer sounding word for we destroyed these things. We demolished them. They raised and scrapped them after the closing of the fair. And so neither of those survived. They took them down, but then they put up the Unisphere, which this is really interesting. I'll pull up an image that has more to say about this. But they took those down and then put this up, where now we've got this globe water ball, right? It's got rings wrapped around it, showing that it's enclosed, it's trapped inside of these rings, and they're calling it Unisphere. And this is shortly after these castle kingdoms that are here in America get conquered and become United States. So this whole uni thing is happening. And we'll see right here, it says the fairgrounds became Flushing Meadows Park and the home of the United Nations just after the Second World War. And down here it says the building housed the United Nations from 1946 to 1950. And I mentioned this before in a previous video, but if you've got independent kingdoms with huge fortresses and stuff, like it makes it difficult if you want to rule the whole world to do that. So you've got to conquer, and then you have to unite, and then everybody under the whole same one thing, then it's much easier to rule everybody. And so you had independent castle kingdoms, but then people start conquering and uniting. So you got this country with all the states united, and then the United Nations uniting all the nations. And that's what we're seeing right here is that's the conquer group that's been uniting everything, making it seem like, oh yeah, everybody get united, and that's conquerors trying to rule everything under one same, much easier to rule system. And so when all this got demolished and became a park, guess what it also became? The home of the United Nations. And I have more to say about the UN when I get to Missouri, but there's a very interesting plaque there, and I'll fill you in on the whole story behind it. It's a very interesting location with a very interesting plaque saying basically that the UN copped it all. Cleopatra's Needle. There's this one here in New York City, which has old hieroglyphics on it, which is really cool. I'd love to go see this one. And this one, they say that they moved it, they shipped it over from Alexandria in 1880 on a wood boat. I think it was just sitting there and they made up a story that it was shipped from a place where an obelisk would make a lot more sense given the story we've been told. But the truth is, Egyptians, Romans, Greeks, Jews, America, anciently prosperous, builders, technology, vehicles, all that stuff. And as far as Bennington, Vermont goes, so it does say it's the obelisk there's the tallest man-made structure in the state of Vermont. And it says that the town has a long history of manufacturing. What are they manufacturing? Primarily wood. Also recognized for pottery, some iron and textiles, but mainly wood. So what's this giant stone obelisk hundreds of feet up in the air doing there with an escalator inside of it? I thought it were wood people. All right, so here is the obelisk. And my goodness, it's just, it's so impressive, guys. If you ever get the chance, go see this one. This has been one of my, by far, it's top 3, I'd have to say, maybe even number 1 here, pieces of architecture. And I would imagine that over here is another type of building structure, temple, pyramid that's been buried that this obelisk was likely connected to. And I was just reading the other day, someone actually sent me a post about it, but and I didn't dig too far into this. I was just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that's exactly what I've been looking at here in America. But it was documented pyramids in China in the early 1900s that since have been, they've placed a bunch of dirt on top of and fast growing shrubbery and trees. And like I've mentioned on a lot of these, well, I haven't mentioned a whole lot of it yet, but I have a little bit. But a lot of these mountains that are shaped like a pyramid, like an old temple, like the mound builders in Ohio and New York. And I think that's what we're seeing is just covered up with fast growing shrubbery and trees that have been placed on top of it, because on none of them do you see really any shrubbery or trees that's old. It's all new growth, pretty recent. And that's what we're seeing exactly right here. And just not too far off. And it looks like it could very well be the shape of some sort of ancient structure like I'm mentioning. You'll notice that it's got slits. So there's a couple there at the bottom. There's more at the top on every single one of the sides. And then at the very, very top, there's like a little metal star type of piece. And so I wonder if, like how we just saw in New York, and there's an elevator inside this one. Again, it wasn't open when I was there, unfortunately, but I wonder if there's not some sort of metal framing inside of there that is also part of the structure. Like I wonder if, because so many of our power poles, energy poles nowadays are just, like metal towers. I wonder if they just surrounded theirs in much better rock so it would last a lot longer, / maybe had other technological engineering purposes. But I wonder if we're just so cheap and we're not rock builders that we just throw up the metal frame structures and we don't care, like cheap, disposable, whatever. But back then they cared a lot more about their architecture. They cared a lot more about their doing it out of rock, strong, durable, making sure it lasts forever. But I'll show you, I got to use my dog Daryl for like a size reference, and you'll see like he's the size of like one of these blocks. I was wrong. Daryl's like half the length of that block there at the bottom. Weight wise, he's not even close. That block has to weigh so much. That one block would crush a wood cart. One block. Here's a look at it straight on the entrance there. Then these two slits towards the bottom. Got another one sitting in the center, and then that, oh, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. So this side's got a bunch of slits all the way up to that observation deck section. And it looks like they've got some glass in there now. Maybe it was there the whole time, maybe not. But did you see how deep that just goes back in there? Like those blocks are thick, thick. The walls of this thing are super thick. And right here you can see how just perfectly angled and straight it is all the way up. It's perfect. I don't think there's a mistake in this thing at all. How they're forming that perfectly straight edge all the hundreds and hundreds of feet. And then here's a look at the door and the blocks that lead into it, just to give you an idea of how big these blocks of stone actually are. There's no way a human's picking up even one of those like by hand. Unless it's a giant, then maybe. And I'd imagine the base of this, the real true base, is probably a lot wider. And here I tried to get my camera flush with it so you can see, because I know it's kind of hard to tell just through camera, but it's not like flat and smooth. It's actual rock protruding out all over the place. Honestly, to the point where you could rock climb it. I think that would be pretty cool if someone came and climbed the whole thing. I'd imagine, honestly, for like a good climber, it wouldn't even be that difficult. Like there's plenty of grab and plenty of foothold. Okay, and then right here on this sign, they're saying that all the buildings that were originally surrounding this had just been torn down. So I imagine if this is still standing here in as good of shape as it is, there were probably castle, fortress architecture sitting around it that they've just since demolished. It says that the last building to be torn down was in 1870, and it was built in 1780, they say. But yeah, I imagine just old fortress architecture that they decided to do away with for whatever reason, left the tower. Probably because for whatever technology purpose it serves, maybe they're still using it as that or something, or maybe it's just too much of a beast to tear down. But I don't know. I think they've pretty, like, if they really want to tear stuff down, it seems like they're able to, when you look at all the other stuff that they've torn down. And it's kind of crazy that this crazy rock obelisk just sits inside a seemingly normal neighborhood. But then right here, a little ways down the street, it gives us right here in this spot, built his first log cabin. And if you just pan to the right, oh, ancient brick structure. So, and a little rock wall right there with a plastic fence on top of it. There's this corkscrew railroad that I came across where they give us, again, I think they're just giving us a story here where some wealthy dude was like, I want to build a railroad. And then some people said no. And so he's like, well, I'm going to do it anyways. And so he went a different way, which ended up 40 miles of super tight turns. And they ended up calling it the Corkscrew Railroad. But then, of course, abandoned in 1953. And if we look just down the street a little bit, you'll see that there's a part of an old castle sticking up down there. And then if we kind of pan back behind it, looking the other way, we'll see the Bennington Obelisk that we were just looking at. And that sits right in front of this, what is now a museum, which is an ancient rock structure, very cool, with some pillars on it. Couple, I would imagine some sort of piece of technology, like maybe that was a stone wheel. I think they call it a millstone. I've seen these in a few different places around the country now. They like to throw them up as, and then I don't know what this one was, but pretty interesting. Maybe some of you zombies know more about these. Those scratches almost make me kind of think of a vinyl record. Something like that. Here's a little close-up look of that castle right there. I thought this was a fun shot of it because, I mean, in my opinion, you can clearly see different civilizations right here. This is us, plastic shark, you know, our paint peeling on this building, plastic sign out front with bright red and bright blue, and then just this rock castle, like it's coming out of nowhere apparently, just chilling back there, perfectly intact. Just like that's old world right there, super old. And this is us, new, recent plastic sharks and plastic signs, and just an absolutely amazing piece of a castle right here, all stone. You know, like, yeah, this castle completely matches that obelisk we were just looking at. Same builders, same time period. Not us and not the Cowboys. See that? There it is over there. If it was built in 1889, they were way better builders, had way more knowledge and better technology to be able to pull that off. 'Cause we don't build like that now. So I think it was just a lot older. Look how big the windows on it. This huge arch with just massive windows. Another perfect tower right there. And then here's another shot of it where you can actually see it's got this kind of, I guess, I don't know, octagonal structure and dome type of thing going on the kind of towards the back of it. You can see there's a lot more to it here. Another big chimney. Look at that. I mean, that looks straight out of like just medieval times as we'd think about it, right? That doesn't, Cowboys, no. I started hearing some music going on inside, so I started poking around wondering if I could get in there to hear a little something. And I did. And I found this picture inside of there where, look at how big the steeple on that tower used to be. That's not there anymore. Right here, on top of this, we already thought it was a cool tower, right? Well, there used to be a much bigger piece of a steeple on top of it that for some reason just really needed to be taken down. And the stained glass inside here is absolutely amazing. The amount of detail and how just real each person is in each of these depictions is amazing. And then I hopefully I can learn a lot more about this, but if you look at what's depicted here at the top, it's all that, like, the same type of like design we saw on the towers outside. We're seeing that same thing here, but way more glorious and detailed and in gold. And then I started noticing, so this is Christ right here. And I'd say the 12 apostles. Right in here, if we notice, tucked up on these rock hills, there's a dome right up there. And then if we come over here to this one, we can see this castle kingdom depicted in the back of it. Let's take a look at these details here, because I think this is giving us a much more real picture of who these people were, what they dressed like, what kind of equipment they had. Because when, I don't know, in all the illustrations and the movies and TV shows or whatever that they make, they always, again, try and show it as just super poor dirt people in rags. And when you look at this, that's inside of these ancient structures that are much older than the dates were given on them, built by these people or the descendants of these people that we see right here. I think this, if you want to get the most accurate depictions of that time period that you can, this, I think, is the way to do that. Go into these old structures that are ancient, built by these people or the descendants of these people, and look at how things are depicted. The helmet, the armory, like, this is very, very nice clothing that they have on. Like, their spear here that's not depicted as some piece of metal, just like steel or whatever as the spear. That's some sort of blue gem. I want to more. Just looked at these murals, these stained glass depictions. for a long time. Like, there's so much to look at here and so much detail. And look, like, each face is clearly a different person and so accurate, you know. Like, I'll show you some other, I think I have already, but if not in this video, another one where I get into some other ones where I look at the stained glass where some of them have been replaced. So you can see the old stained glass and the new stained glass, and the faces are just not even close. Like, it's just looks like a kid did this one and the most expert stained glass artist did this one. And it's the old one that's much better, not the new one. And then again, when you look in the background of these, like, you see all this, I just don't know really what this is here. It's just, I don't know, the top, I'd say the tops of buildings, but yeah, something like that, like the tops of castles, but all gold plated. I just think this is a much more real picture of the past than anything we've been fed in textbooks or cartoons or TV shows. Obviously most of the structure is just stone, but then they do amazing woodwork, beautiful, gorgeous woodwork with different beams and arches on the interiors of these buildings. Like this, that's what I'm talking about. Like, and then the organ, and then here's some more stained glass windows where just the amount of perfection and perfect detail. Like here, right here, we've got Christ as a baby. And this is one thing I started noticing that was really cool that I'd never really seen or paid attention to before, but all the halos, you know, the halos, the crowns around their head. And you'll see that some of them are much more glorious, much more intricate, much more brilliant than other ones. So they're in a rock structure with arches that looks exactly like the type of architecture we're looking at. And then they show in the background, in this case, I don't know, maybe Jerusalem, something like that, but more just arches, rock, domed architecture back there. And so this is what I mean by some of the halos. Like right here, Christ has got a lot more design to it, where his apostles over here, some of them have a little bit more, some of them a little bit less, but they still have halos, which is a good thing, because in some of these depictions, some people, like when it shows the soldiers don't have halos. And then I believe this is a depiction of Christ giving the keys of the kingdom, the keys of the priesthood to his apostles, so his apostles could continue the work of spreading the gospel, of baptizing once he was gone, ascended back to heaven. And again, what do we see in the background here? And there was this building too, this design where they do this with the, I don't know, the gray stuff, and see these arches down here on top of all that rock. So we've got the stone with these cement arches and cement design, and then all the perfectly laid brick. It's also laid out in arches, and all this has just been stripped right there. Just another very, very cool ancient building, still intact pretty well. I think a lot's been stripped off it, but then just a tacky sign thrown on top of it to say that it's a repurposed into an elementary school. And then here's another church that I found. Again, just another piece of a castle, obviously. Like, look how cool that is, guys. That's straight castle rock right there. These ladies right here, I was taking photos and videos and stuff, so I started chatting with them a little bit. And one of the ladies was like, yeah, look how it still has a Celtic cross on it, which not a lot of these churches have anymore, and it's really cool, really heavy. That was the first time I kind of, I don't know, heard much about a Celtic cross. And she started giving the story about the age of it, and I was like, it looks a lot older than that. And then there was one lady over here that, I'm not gonna try and point her out or anything, but she was just like I could kind of tell she just like didn't like me being there interrupting or whatever. But like everybody else was fine with it and like wanted to talk and stuff, but she just was keeping her distance or whatever. And then as soon as I said that, I was like, it looks a lot older than that. She piped up, she's like, oh no, that's because, and then some of the other lady chimed in and she kind of quieted down again. But it was just interesting that like she really went out of her way to defend and just when I said it looks a lot older, because it clearly is. And if you do some research on Celtic crosses, it's a completely different time period than, I don't know, late 1800s, early 1900s, whatever date they try and put on this building. But this is clearly just another beautiful ancient rock structure with, yes, a beautiful ancient Celtic cross still on top of it. And you can see these beautiful arches over here. Fortunately, I didn't get inside of this one, but really cool to see just from the outside. It's just a little ways down the road, looking at this school again. But what I wanted to show you here is that when we look down into this canal right here, you can see that it's an ancient canal, still a little bit of water in it, but for the most part, you know, decommissioned, not really in use a whole lot. Another stone building right across the street with whatever was above on the windows has been stripped, probably gold. And then this factory kind of a thing right across the street with the depiction of the obelisk right there. And again, where the wood letters and wood obelisk placed on a perfectly stacked brick building, the signs just don't make sense. Like we see on these buildings, when the builders of it wanted to write on it or show an image on it, they just carved it into the rock. They didn't slap signage on it. We slapped the signage on their old buildings because we suck with rock. And here's another little look at the canal. You can see it's just in ruins, but you can see the old rock work, the old cement right there. This building was pretty impressive here. They usually call these factories, you can see the obelisk over there on the right. It's got this big tower on it and just walls, just like big walls, 1, 2, 3, 4 stories. It's just a big structure squared like that. And they give it the new sign right there, the new date of 1921. But this is just I don't know what this would have been. And look how they layer all this brick like that. I think that's so cool. Like so much detail in the brick on huge buildings too. These are huge buildings made out of all brick. And then there's also this clearly ancient marble building. I'd have to do, yeah, see, with Roman heads depicted on it. Like if that's not a clear giveaway. But yeah, just beautiful brick. There we see the ribbons. I showed that in my last video too, that ancient kind of ribbon design. And you can see right here, like that clock, that's us. Whatever was right there, we threw a cheap little clock inside there, but there was something way better in there previously. Church, very cool brick building, huge stained glass windows, and a tower that's just been absolute. I mean, there's barely anything left on this tower. All right, we know now that I've shown you that over and over again, when you see something like this just squared off at the top, that means it's been stripped of whatever steeple tower was originally on top of the whole thing. And right here, so they painted this section white, but you can see the little faces on the top of this design, and that right there is the same. So that type of design, when we were looking at the stained glass and all the gold tipping of the architecture, like it's this type of thing. And here's a look at it going on to the other side, and you see the shift in like the brown brick to the red brick, and then underneath at the bottom here, yeah, we've got stone and then brick arches where the windows are shooting just straight into the ground. So that's really interesting, the change in brick right there. I'm not sure what that's exactly about, but and then if we pan across the street here, you'll see another, you know, amazing brick building. But then there's right here, looks like that marble. Yeah, I think that's marble right there. That one's got yellow siding thrown on it. And then this one's a different kind of marble, I think. And just another insanely big brick structure. So I guess this is currently a Masonic lodge. And then down here, bottom left, you can see those windows just going straight into the ground. The date on this they're giving it is 1911. Here's a look at it straight on, and there's a look at those symbols. Like this one over here, I have no idea what that is. I mean, I don't have any idea what any of these are, honestly, but like to us, that just like a little, like a spade for gardening, and this like a hammer, but to them, maybe that is. Maybe this is depicting agriculture. Maybe this is depicting how good they are at construction, like constructing amazing buildings. And then, I don't know, a crown and a cross, dedication to Christ and God as their king. And so here's the public library with a little dome on top. And then that, perfectly stacked brick. You got the ancient triangle shape, tacky sign there now. We've seen in plenty of these types of buildings where they just cover that up. In this case, they turned it into a sign. And then I just think this is funny. Here's a sign for historic Bennington. We've seen all these rocks, all these castles, everything. And then here's our horse and buggy on dirt roads, siding on all of these buildings. It's not making sense for what we're actually seeing here. That stained glass depicting perfectly the old world, the biblical times, all the ancient, literally seeing castles, obelisks. We're seeing what Egyptians and Romans and Greeks built, not what these cowboys and their wood wagons built. And then here's another church down the way with a really cool tower on it with a bell in there, some nice looking steeples. And this tower had a really cool design right there. I'm not really sure what it is, but kind of surrounding the top of that arch right there. Here's a look at it from the side. You can see how it has like this rounded shape to it over here, which is really cool. And you can also tell it's just going much deeper into the earth. And then I found this building here. They're giving it the date of 1913. Definitely don't believe that's accurate. Definitely don't believe this was originally a high school. But look at this. When I back this out, those columns, those pillars are clearly perfectly old world styled. And then the steps that guy's sitting on right there are actually marble. So that's interesting. So again, I just think they've etched around, they've added words around this and added a date to it. But if we back this out and look at this whole little section of the building right here, I think this is just a little piece of whatever used to be there. And it's interesting, they got these little marble tiles in the corners. But yeah, I think this whole section might have had a lot more on it. And then I also saw this guy, just some more really cool pillars, really cool white marble building. I didn't really get out, and I was just driving by and snapped a quick shot of it. And that's gonna be it for Bennington, Vermont. Just wow. I love the fact that I got to go explore there. I love oh man, maybe one of my favorite places, because the obelisk is just stunning and out of this world. It's old world. The castles there, but then I really, really love seeing that stained glass inside of that castle church, because it's just, in my opinion, so telling. And their faces, the way they're dressed, the different tools that they're carrying with them, for lack of a better word, and then how you can see the old cities depicted in the background that are all rock and dome, and like the halos and Christ and the stories, and then the other buildings that we see, where we're seeing Romans depicted on them, we're seeing all the ancient pillars, and I just think it's very clear who built these, and it's not the Cowboys.